Everyone knows Werewolves of London, the howling piano riff, that line about a Chinese menu. But here's what most people don't know. The Grateful Dead, a band that built their entire reputation on avoiding top 40 radio like it was the plague, made Warren Zevon's novelty hit into one of their most beloved encores. And they only played it 12 times. 12 times, that's it. 12 performances over 13 years, and somehow it became this whole thing. A Halloween tradition, a fan favorite, something Dead & Company still breaks out at Madison Square Garden, which is weird, right? The Dead had hundreds of songs in rotation. They'd play Dark Star 220 times, jam on Playing in the Band for half an hour. But this 3-minute shuffle about a werewolf in London's Chinatown? 12 times, and it's stuck. So how did that happen? And more importantly, why did Jerry Garcia, who spent his entire career chasing the next musical rabbit hole, grab onto a song that Warren Zevon himself called a throwaway? Because there's a whole story here that nobody talks about Garcia recording a completely different Zevon song that never saw the light of day. About a torture session in the studio that nearly broke Waddy Wachtel. And about the weird alchemy that happens when the right band finds the right song at exactly the right moment. Let's start with how Werewolves of London even exists, because the origin story is ridiculous. Early 1977, Phil Everly, one of the Everly brothers, had just watched the 1935 Universal horror film Werewolf of London, and for whatever reason, he decided this needed to be a song. So he calls up Warren Zevon and says basically, you should write a tune about this and make it a dance craze. Zevon thought it was funny. He was hanging out with his go-to collaborators, guitarist Waddy Wachtel and bassist LeRoy Marinell, and they just started. According to music podcaster Claude Call, they kicked things off with the line, "I saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand," and finished a rough version in about 15 minutes. 15 minutes, the whole song. Verses, that iconic piano line, the references to Lee Ho Fook's restaurant in London's Chinatown, and Trader Vic's in the London Hilton. They were laughing their asses off the entire time, which makes what happened next even more absurd, because recording Werewolves of London nearly destroyed everyone involved. Waddy Wachtel would later say it was the hardest song I ever worked on. Think about that for a second. Wachtel had worked with Linda Ronstadt, had session credits all over LA, knew his way around a studio, and this jokey 3-chord shuffle broke him. They tried 7 different bands, 7. They burned through combinations, ran all-night sessions, ate up most of the Excitable Boy album budget trying to capture this stupid werewolf song. Wachtel compared it to Coppola making Apocalypse Now. That's how out of control it got. Finally, they called in the big guns. Mick Fleetwood and John McVie from Fleetwood Mac came in to lay down the rhythm section, and something clicked. Fleetwood's drums and McVie's bass gave it that shuffle, that groove the song needed. And Wachtel? He nailed his guitar solo in one take. After all those sessions, all those different bands, all that chaos, one take. The song came out in January '78 on Excitable Boy. It climbed to number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100. Not exactly Stairway to Heaven numbers, but solid for what Zevon knew was essentially a novelty track. He'd joke later that he'd rather have written Bridge Over Troubled Water, something serious, something with weight. But he got the werewolf song instead. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because 8 months before Werewolves of London hit the charts, Jerry Garcia was already paying attention to Warren Zevon. August 3, 1977, Clubfront Studio in San Rafael, the Dead's rehearsal space. Garcia's in there with Steve Parrish and engineer Bob Matthews, and they're working on material for what would become the Cats Under the Stars sessions. And Garcia records Accidentally Like a Martyr, this beautiful melancholy Zevon ballad from Excitable Boy. According to Jambase, it's the only documented instance of Garcia playing the song. He never brought it to a live show, never revisited it. It just stayed in the vault. But that tells you something. Garcia was hip to Zevon's writing. The dark humor, the literary references, that edge of sardonic wit that ran through everything Zevon touched. So when Werewolves of London started getting airplay a few months later, Garcia was paying attention. April 19th, 1978, Veterans Memorial Auditorium in Columbus, Ohio. The Dead closed their show with something nobody expected, a giddy Garcia-sung encore of Werewolves of London. The crowd went nuts. According to the Dead Freaks Unite blog, it was this spontaneous, joyful thing. Garcia's grinning through the verses, the band's locked into that shuffle groove, and everyone in the room knew they were witnessing something weird and wonderful. 2 nights later in Lexington, Kentucky, they did it again. And this is where Donna Jean Godchalk comes in, because if you know Donna's voice, you know she could take a line and make it soar. She leaned hard into "He'll rip your lungs out, Jim," adding this soulful intensity that turned the encore into what Dead Freaks Unite called a full band party. By April 24th in Normal, Illinois, the tour closer, the song had mellowed out a bit, more subdued, but still fun. And then they played it one more time, July 8th, 1978, Red Rocks Amphitheater in Morrison, Colorado. This is the version that got officially released years later, the one most people know. About 6.5 minutes of the Dead turning a novelty hit into their own thing. Garcia's voice warm and playful. The whole band howling along. The Colorado crowd joining in. It's a great version. Clean, energetic, capturing that moment when the Dead were at their loosest and most confident. And then, nothing. 7 years, 522 shows. They just stopped playing it. Look, this was classic Dead behavior. They'd grab a cover, play it for a few shows, then drop it completely. But Werewolves of London felt different because of how enthusiastically they'd embraced it those first few times. So why shelve it? Nobody knows for sure, but maybe it felt too novelty, too on the nose for a band trying to distance themselves from anything that smelled like commercialism. Maybe Garcia just moved on. He was always chasing the next thing, always looking for that moment when he'd feel satisfied and quit playing. Or maybe it was waiting for the right moment to come back. Halloween 1985, Carolina Coliseum in Columbia, South Carolina. The Dead opened the second set with Space, that ambient exploratory zone where anything could happen, and then dropped straight into Werewolves of London. The song had returned, and it had found its home. Halloween shows, of course. A song about a werewolf prowling London becomes an American Halloween tradition. The irony was perfect, and the Dead knew it. Garcia started changing the lyrics. According to Dead.net, he'd swap lines, sing things like, "You better not mess with him," or "You find him sneaking around your kitchen door." These weren't mistakes. Garcia was playing with the song, making it theirs. The Dead never did straight covers anyway. Everything got filtered through their improvisational sensibility, their collective weirdness. October 31st, 1990, Wembley Arena, London. Think about that for a second. They're playing Werewolves of London actually in London on Halloween, in a venue close enough to the real Lee Ho Folks restaurant that fans could have taken the tube to Gerrard Street after the show. The synchronicity was too perfect. The crowd knew it too. There's this energy on the recording, this sense that everyone understood the cosmic joke. The Dead played Werewolves of London one last time on October 31st, 1991, Oakland Coliseum Arena. Garcia couldn't resist. He sang Werewolves of Oakland, swapping the lyric to reference their home base. It got a huge laugh, and that was it. 12 performances, done. But the song didn't die with the Dead. The Jerry Garcia Band had been playing it since October 1988, and Garcia stretched those JGB versions out, sometimes 10 or 13 minutes, turning them into these extended call-and-response howling sessions with the audience. The GarciaLive Volume 19 release captured a Halloween '92 version that runs 13 minutes and showcases Garcia completely reimagining what the song could be. Meanwhile, Garcia and Zevon kept orbiting each other. In 1989, Garcia contributed a guitar solo to the title track of Zevon's Transverse City album. According to a Countdown Kid review, Garcia's playing was wild and exploratory, though the arrangement kind of buried him in the mix. But it shows that connection was real, two artists who understood each other's dark humor and musical curiosity. After Garcia died, Phil Lesh and friends picked up Werewolves of London, then Rat Dog, then Dead & Company rolled it out at Madison Square Garden in 2019, continuing the Halloween tradition. A song the Grateful Dead played only 12 times has become this permanent fixture in the Dead universe, passed down through every iteration of the band. Which brings us back to the central weirdness of the whole thing. Warren Zevon wrote a joke song in 15 minutes that tortured everyone who tried to record it. It became a minor chart hit that Zevon himself dismissed as a novelty. The Grateful Dead, notorious for avoiding anything that smelled like commercial radio, grabbed it, played it a dozen times over 13 years, and turned it into a cultural touchstone that outlived both Zevon and Garcia. 12 performances, that's less than they played Give Me Some Lovin', or Big Boss Man, or a dozen other covers that nobody remembers. But those dozen performances mattered because they represented something essential about how the Dead operated. They never cared about what they were supposed to do. A top 40 novelty hit about a werewolf? Sure, why not? Turn it into a Halloween tradition? Absolutely. Play it in London on Halloween? Perfect. Change the lyrics to Werewolves of Oakland just because it's funny? That's the whole point. Garcia understood something about Werewolves of London that maybe Zevon didn't at first. That underneath the joke was a genuinely great song. That shuffle groove, those specific details about Lee Ho Fuchs and Trader Vic's. The image of a werewolf with perfect hair drinking a pina colada. It was ridiculous and literary and catchy and dark all at once. It was, in its own weird way, exactly the kind of material the Dead built their career on. Strange stories told with precision and humor, and just enough darkness to keep it interesting. So yeah, 12 performances, 12 times over 13 years. And somehow that was enough to make Werewolves of London part of the Dead's legacy forever. Because in the end, it wasn't about how many times they played it. It was about understanding that sometimes the right song finds the right band at exactly the right moment. Even if that song is a 3-minute joke about a werewolf written in 15 minutes that took 7 bands to record properly. That's the whole story, or at least the version nobody tells you.